Welcome to Transformations, interviewing people changing our world. I'm your host, Diane J. Shaver, and each interview, I interview somebody who made that decision. So it's one person, one decision, one choice, and they're a world changer. And my wish is that they inspire you so that you are a world changer too. So today I have the pleasure of interviewing someone who made that decision and now has a whole community on board, which is what happens usually when somebody makes that heartfelt decision. There are other people that want to help, that want to jump on board. So that will be your experience too when you make that decision. Her name is Elizabeth Kane, and she's the ministry coordinator at Unity Church of Charleston, and so much more, but we'll leave it at that for the moment. And she is doing something that's absolutely wonderful, and she's going to tell you about it. So please welcome Elizabeth Kane. Welcome, Elizabeth.
Good morning.
Hi, honey. So when we last spoke, you had delivered this incredible talk at Unity Church about how we need to reconnect with the planet. And let's go back a minute. What made you want to do that? Why reconnect with the planet? Why was that important for you?
Well, I had the pleasure of being at the Parliament of World Religions in Toronto in the fall of 2018, and a great deal of the speakers were talking about how change needed to occur on a spiritual level around earth care, and that many of the changes that have happened in culture have happened through the faith communities. And so it was a call to the heart, an awakening to say that we are a place where people go to for guidance, for growth, and for spiritual connection. And it's the perfect venue for us to look at the world and see what's going on and how we impact it. And so I came back from that just really inspired with the idea that the things that had been on my heart about what I'm seeing with the earth and how we're using it up and affecting it in so many ways, that I found my power around that. I guess I found permission at the World Religions Parliament that, yes, this is a place where this kind of work can be done. I'd not seen it previous to that, really.
Yeah, that's really so wonderful. And you used a word that was so important, and that was that you felt powerful. And that's the thing I want everybody to get. We are powerful, and we become powerful when we connect up with whatever it is that lights us up, as it did for you, Elizabeth. So what's happened since then? I know that there's been a lot.
A lot of it has been around education. And so I've done a lot of research about how did we end up where we are? What is our mindset and how did we get there? And so I went back, 3,000 years or so and looked at how spirituality connects with the earth and realized that it's been just a shift over time, that the indigenous cultures really were well connected with the earth and they understood that it's a relationship. And how when we got the first, Jewish and Christian religions coming online 3,000, 2,000 years ago, it really changed that paradigm of humans' relationship with the earth, and that we become not so much in relationship with, but in dominion over. And so I think that's embedded theology that we're all operating from if you come from any of those traditional religions. And so that's why I say it's an opening, a spiritual awakening, an elevation in consciousness to come out of that embedded theology and look at how we can do things differently and what each of our power and responsibility is. So we've had lots of things happen around here, both in teaching and in practice. And so the teaching modalities have been through lessons during our Sunday services, and also through having a speaker come in once a month to do what we call eco talks. And so we've talked about things like food usage, that's the best way for your body and for the earth. We've talked about recycling and if it's working or if it's not working, and what we can do better about that. And we've talked about and gathered together and created items that we can use that are trash free. So we made the beeswax wraps and have them available here at the church. We've made the produce vegetable bags out of old t-shirts and all those kinds of things. So for me, it's threefold. It's one, education and educating the mind and the intellect. It's also skill building. And so we need to know what we can do differently. And so we've been focusing on that. And the third is creating good foods in the food desert that our church actually is where our home plant is in North Charleston, which is a food desert. We have a food pantry. And so we've been growing fresh organic vegetables to be given out at our food pantry. So many people have gotten excited. So many people have come on board. I'm really happy. I'm really pleased with the response that we've gotten.
That's so important, and what you are pointing out, and a lot more, but that it's action that makes a difference. We can think all day long. And I had this discussion, I interviewed Jamie Margolin from Zero Hour yesterday, and they outlined all the things that need to happen. We need to reduce our carbon imprint, obviously, but it's the action that makes it happen. And I think sometimes people don't connect up the idea with action. So what was it, do you think, that had so many people connect up the fact that here is an issue, here is a solution, and now let's do something about it? So how did they get the do something about it part?
Well, I think when you offer people solutions and you offer people opportunities, they are happy to respond. Many of us kind of sit at home going, what can I do? What can I do? And that was a big part of it, is to say, here's what you can do. You know, we're going to use all reusable dishes at church. Any paper goods that we do use, we're going to compost. You know, we're going to go trash free. We're going to, you know, have a rain barrel. We're going to have this garden. We're going to, you know, try to be as trash free as possible. And we started out really talking about recycling, and that was right at the time that China and several countries have stopped receiving our recyclables because they're so contaminated with things that should not be in there that it ends up just going in a landfill at their country instead of ours. And so actually it was very important for me and for the people who did decide to do recycling that they were doing it correctly. And I'm more convinced of that than ever. And we have a huge recycling area here at church where you separate out things that wouldn't normally go in the blue recycling bucket, but we've got people here who have owned the responsibility of taking plastic film and those kinds of things to where it can be recycled, taking batteries, taking printer cartridges, you know, all the different things that you can't throw in the blue bucket. So we've gone so far past the blue bucket now, and I'm really proud of that. I think we're getting some shipments returned to us by barge from Thailand right now because they are so contaminated. So if we don't do recycling well, we're even going to lose that option. And so I think it's very important we do that correctly.
Absolutely. And I think people don't understand that if you're not sure it can be recycled, don't put it in the recycling bin, because that's the contamination, excuse me, that you're talking about. And that is what's causing what you're saying, bringing it back to us. One of the things you touched on briefly, and I want to go into it a little bit more, is that our food choices. So apparently beef and lamb are the two crops, if you want to call it that, that contaminate the most. So how do you see our food choices changing our planet?
Well, more and more we're hearing about a plant-based diet and to really reduce the amount of red meat that's consumed because of the carbon emissions, the destruction of the environment around them. There's water spills, a lot of time flooding, you know, the gross barn water that gets, you know, from the pig pits and those kinds of things into the downhill water flow. And so it just, the amount of water that it takes to create that kind of meat and the environment and the treatment of the animals that are in agriculture. I think many people are realizing that a plant-based diet, at least most of the week, would help significantly. And we do offer here at church, many of the large meals that we serve are vegetarian, or there'll be just one small little meat item that they can choose. I think we're going to have to really look at this. I'm contemplating myself how I feel about the 3D printed meat and things like that. I think it may be that we just have stem cells in a laboratory that's creating red meat. And if you are rich enough to get that, that may be what's available. But I do see things cracking down around availability on price point and upon ethical concerns.
Yeah, I think that's well said. One of the things as we're talking, it strikes me is that there has to be that connection. And what I mean is that people's habits and their ideas, and they have to come together. And I think that's really hard for people. Like, I talk to people about carbon emissions and they're saying, yeah, we got to reduce it. And I look at the cars they're driving. They're huge SUVs. So while they're saying it, they're not doing it. So what has to happen to bring the saying and doing together, do you think?
That carbon emissions is a tough one. And really, we're just now beginning to look at that as a church community here. Yeah. In August, we do have someone coming from the Citizens Climate Lobby to talk with us. Oh, and yes, and so Mark Gould is going to be coming and speaking with us. There are some things around that we really need to educate ourselves around. And it has been such a large issue. I've not felt expert enough myself to do that, but I'm getting people in to do it. But especially with our country as large as it is, and the fact that we don't have transportation infrastructure that gives us other choices, it's going to be one of the greatest challenges that we have. But we can do it. I know we can. We can do it. Some of it is going to be ride sharing. Some of it are decisions that you can make. You don't run out for one little thing. In the last interview that we did, we talked a lot about me growing up in the mountains of Kentucky. And so I'm a little bit trained around some of these things. And one of the things is you went to town on Saturday and you did every errand, every chore, every shopping and everything on that one trip to town. And so otherwise we were riding the school bus or Dad was going back and forth to work, but we really did not consume a lot of gasoline, and gasoline was really seen as a resource. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the thing we have to understand is that everything that we consume is a resource. Mm-hmm. And just because we had enough money to buy it doesn't mean that that money covers all the environmental impact and everything else that happens because we consume that product. And so we have to be responsible enough to earn the money to have the gasoline, but we also have to have enough money in taxes or however it turns out to actually support a way in which we are less dependent on gasoline. And so those discussions are happening. I know there's several bills in Congress right now that are looking at it. And I want to believe that people can rise and do this independently, but I do believe it's going to come probably more through regulation and increase in prices.
Yeah. And one of the things I think that impacts us so much is that we don't live in villages anymore. And when we lived in a village, you could walk to the center of town, you could bicycle to the center of town and so forth. And now, like I look at where I'm living, and I mean, it's like to get to you is like a half an hour, to get to Mount Pleasant is 28 minutes. And so I have to be in a car in order to make meetings. So I'm thinking that we also need to look at urban development and the planning, city planning, and to start planning, city villages again, if you will, where people don't have to drive places. So this is kind of a real revolution in thinking about everything. What are your thoughts about that?
Yes, and so in Charleston, they've gotten a little bit of this idea where they're doing a lot more multi-housing downtown on the peninsula. There's a limit of how much land is actually there that they can build on, but they are building many condos and apartments down there. It is a very pricey area, so that knocks a lot of people out of it. But I also know even in the surrounding areas, in Summerville, they have a village that has the school, the post office, the deli, the grocery store, the gym, the meeting house, everything all together at community garden. And it, has about 400 houses in that neighborhood. So people are looking forward. And if that's where we spend our dollars, there'll be more options there.
Yeah.
And so voting with your money is one of the biggest things you can do. Vote at the ballot box and also vote with your money. We interviewed a restaurant here that is composting everything that they're doing in the restaurant. And I think the only thing that actually went into the trash were the kids' juice boxes, and everything else was compostable or reusable. And so we made a big deal about that at church, and we said, go there and eat and enjoy and support this. And other restaurants are coming online to do that. So we have to vote with our dollars, but we have to know enough to be able to do that. So it takes research. You have to invest some time in this, like, is it recyclable or not? So you have a choice. You can either go online and research it and find out for yourself. I printed out some resources and put it on the front of my refrigerator. So all I have to do is walk over there and look at it and know what I'm doing with the object, recycling or trashing. And so you can either just go ahead and trash it, or you can spend a minute and recycle by researching it even better. It's going to take some time. And that's what I mean. The time that it takes, the restructuring of habits, the putting in place these new skills and wanting to learn them, all starts with that elevated consciousness, this awakening that I think is the most important, and why the faith communities are the best place for this kind of work to begin. Because we're looking to grow our spirit when we come to the faith communities of whatever brand or name you want to call that faith community. But we are there to be better, to do better, and to be responsible for our own lives. And our impact on the earth. So, that awakening of spirit is, I think, crucial before any of these other places or other habits or practices come in, because you feel dedicated to it. You will spend the time. You want to learn new skills. And we have a burning bowl tradition here that you put forth some kind of attribute or habit or something you'd like to purge from your life, and you take it to the burning bowl and burn it, and then you write a letter of intention of a positive affirmation around that. And this year, when I did it just a few weeks ago, I asked that not only you make an intention for yourself that's affirmative, but also for the earth. What is it that you can do for the earth, and make a commitment to that intention, and try and see how it works for you. And so I've tried several different ways of doing things, and you have to kind of rework it and until it works for your life. But it can work for your life, this consciousness of earth care.
Yeah, I think it brings people together because we've become very isolated, which is very clear. And I think that's part of why we're so divided now in this country, because people are finding a group, any group to belong to. And I think we want to belong. And as you're saying, as we commit to being more conscious, then that brings us together, I think. What are your thoughts?
Absolutely. We all want to gather around something positive. With the political climate and the economics and aging and all of the things that many of us are experiencing, we feel like there's a lot of things we can't do anything about. But if you want to find your power, there's a great deal of power in this issue right here, locally, in your own home, in your communities, in your state house, all the way up through Congress. You have power around these issues. And boy, don't we see the young people grabbing that power and going with it.
Yeah. Do you know that Greta Thunberg is coming to the States?
Yes, I'm very excited about that. I have always had a feeling that this generation, and my children are just a little bit older than this generation of Greta's, but I always feel like this will be the generation that looks at things and decides more readily. Is that really how it should be? Instead of just accepting things and moving on. That may have been difficult as they're teenagers to be that rebellious and to have to look and decide for themselves on every issue, but I think it's going to serve us well.
Yeah. These kids, like talking to Jamie yesterday, they're way beyond what's going on. It's like, this is what has to happen. This, and this, and this is what we have to do. So they're very clear. And
Yes.
what I was talking to Jamie about it, and what she said to me, the 17-year-olds aren't the ones that need to make it happen. We can tell you what, you have to make it happen.
Yes.
And for these kids are going to be 18 in 2020, and they're going to vote.
Yeah.
So
I'm
that's
excited about that.
yeah. One of the things I think that people don't understand, and I'd like your take on this too, is that we're not saving the planet. We're
Yeah.
saving humanity. The planet will right itself. It will be fine. It always has been fine. It's humanity, because there have been many extinctions, and we're kind of on the brink of extinction. And people don't seem to get this. So what's your take on this?
It is true. You know, we talk about saving the planet. It is not about that at all. It is saving us and all the other living beings. You know, the earth has done this so many times, from, you know, floods and volcanoes and eruptions and, you know, massive asteroids and all kinds of things have come and disrupted the earth enough for it to shake itself free of everything and start over. And that's sort of what I see the earth doing is, you know, because of what we've done, we've created this massive downhill snowball, and we need to, you know, figure out where we have influence on that and to start doing it immediately. One of the things that I am thrilled to hear about so much in the last few weeks are all the trees being planted. And so Ethiopia just set a world record of, what was it, 350 million trees planted in one day? And I'd seen China and India. You know, these people are taking their National Guard and their military and anyone who's willing to volunteer to do it, and they're creating the most instant impact on carbon emissions, which is trees, who will take that carbon and actually give us what we need, oxygen. And so it's such, in one way, it's such a simple thing, but can you imagine getting enough people together to plant 350 million trees in a day?
Okay, I think we need to do that, Elizabeth. Let's make that our challenge.
I got so excited when I heard that. But this, you know who did it? The state government. The government ran ads. They set a date. The government ran ads and these beautiful commercials in support of the project, and said, you know, here's how you sign up. And it was a national movement. And then the military was the ones that went out and distributed all of the seedlings. And that's what I mean about voting, because the government has resources and access, and really should be the ones most invested in the survivorship of their citizens. And we've got to make a change in America. They're talking about one of the effects of the, which they didn't realize it was going to have this great side effect, was the nationalism around doing something good together for Ethiopia. I'd like to have that kind of nationalism around doing good, right? Instead of this separate and only these people feel nationalism. You know, they had everybody helping with that. And it was such a wonderful, inspiring thing.
Yeah. The other thing about trees that's very important is they cool the planet down. And that's one of the things that we absolutely have to do. So they take the carbon out of the atmosphere, but they also cool the planet down. And that's one of the critical things, is where it's heating up too much. So all of that. So, okay, Elizabeth, I want to challenge us. So let's see what we can do to go to our government and do the tree planting, because that would be a great Charleston or South Carolina thing. And then maybe that will spread.
That's an awesome idea. They were even planting them in the medians and, you know, in public spaces and private spaces. They had done so much setup work in terms of where it was going to happen and how to get the resources to the people. And it can be done. That's the thing. It can be done.
And it's interesting. I'm sure you share this, but for citizens sitting here and listening to Congress do nothing, it is the most frustrating thing there is. So I think it's going to be up to the states if they're willing, and maybe the cities if they're willing, and individual people to start things moving, because I think the government is moving so slowly and there's such lack of will. Do you think we can make this happen at city and state levels?
Yes, I believe so. I know here in Charleston, I think that we have a very good listening ear who wants to know what the people want. And it's just like voting with your dollars. When the government realizes the amount of people who want that, they jump on board because those are voters.
Yeah.
And so in some ways, democracy is in action because they're representative of those who voted. And if us eco-loving, earth-based people make our wishes and desires known, and they know that we vote, that's how you change things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And this 2020 election is going to be very, very interesting, because listening to the debates last night was interesting. So people are aware of the issues, and let's see how that all plays out. But you're right, we have power, we can vote. And I think that even though there's some question about the safety of our voting, I think there's enough people on board that will ensure that that will happen. So what do you think about 2020? How do you think people will show up? Do you think they will? Do you think the millennials, do you know there's more millennials than there are of us guys? And so if they all vote,
yeah.
So what do you think about all of that?
I'm hopeful, and I plan to fill up my car on election day like every hour and take people to the polls. So if anybody needs a ride, please let me know. But I think that's what it's going to take, is to make sure that people know their power and that it's there. I was very happy with the election locally here that Joe Cunningham, an environmentalist and engineer, was elected. And he is the one that's looking at the offshore drilling and the different things around the South Carolina coast. Right. So to me, that seemed like progress, someone who knows the issues. I hope he continues to be an advocate in that way. And so I think those possibilities exist. I think those people are stepping up as an option to be voted on.
Yeah.
Right? We didn't have them before either.
This is very true. Another thing I want to talk about, and I'm involved in this, so I really love it, is the Eco newsletter. So tell us about that and how you came up with that and what you want to do with it.
Well, we came up with it because a lot of people asked me a lot of questions after I did several services around the ecology practices that we could put into place here at church and at home. And I thought, there is so much information out there, and I was doing so much research, first personally for myself and then for our community, that I thought there's a lot of integral pieces that need to get out to people who want to know about this. So people have signed up to receive this once a month, and it's really a distillation of all the research that you and I do to put together that seems to be useful and practical, but also inspirational. And I've gotten great feedback about it. I've got people, more and more people signing up to receive it. And it's not, it's something anyone could do, but you know what? No one was doing it. Yeah. So I said, we can do that because I have a lot of information. And like I said, and the other thing is, I'm not an expert in any of this. I'm just a person who cared. And I said, we can do better than this. There's many things that I see in America that I go, we can do better than that. And so this is one that we've combined with about feeding the hungry and the people that are in food scarce areas. And so we combined it with our garden and growing there, and just growing some fresh organic vegetables for them. And really, it's interesting that people have started doing more planting at home, and that's wonderful. So that's really what I wanted, is to be a demonstration of how this can be done. And so our next step is to go to other faith communities here in the Lowcountry and talk with them about, this is what we've done and we feel great about it. And I'd like to invite you to, be a part of this in your own community, and if they want to garden here with us. But I think we've gotten to a place that that we're ready to step out and say, hey, we did it and you can do it too. There's a couple of things left to do, an energy audit and to look at the last processes, like to make sure the lawn guy's not using any pesticides and all those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And when we finish that, we'll be a Green Faith Community certified community. And so we're almost there. And I think that's one of the certifications that'll help me go out to other communities and say, you know, this is an excellent place for this kind of work to start. And it disseminates out from here into people's homes and has impact.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the many things that you said that was really powerful, and that was, you said, I'm not an expert in any of this. And I think we've got to get it. We can't wait for experts. We become expert when we do something, because when we set out to do something, we learn what we need to learn. And that's what it's about. I think that's, again, going into that thing of people feeling powerless. We become powerful when we step up. And we have no idea what we're doing, but we do learn. So what do you think people need in order to put those two thoughts together, that I need to do something, I have no idea, but it's okay? What do we need?
It's okay. Gosh, with the internet, we can all be experts in a year, right? I mean, there's so much information out there. And just little bits of things like the idea, I did not know why composting was so important. I knew it made good soil if you were going to garden and that kind of thing. What I didn't know until I researched was that rotting food in landfills gives off methane.
Yeah.
That's a problem. And then if you look at the amount of food waste that happens in America, then you realize we're releasing a lot of methane into the environment. And so little bits of information like that is that awakening. It's like, why does that matter? And I've always been the kind of person that had to know why it mattered, you know,
Sure.
Get a recommendation from a doctor or whatever. You can't just tell me what I need to do. You have to tell me why and how it affects in the long term and all that kind of thing. I need more information. And I think people do need more information. And so that's what we've tried to do with the newsletter, with the speakers that come in, with the services that we've offered on Sundays, is give those pieces that kind of click into place. You go, oh, that's why I need to do that.
Yeah.
And it's knowledge, you know, it is information.
Yeah, it is. How has this changed you when you look back to the first time you thought about it and then you gave your talk at Unity, and now how has that changed you? It's got to have made some real impact on you.
It's funny. Of course I love it, and I did find power in it. And if you want to feel like you're doing something good in a world of crazy, this is such an achievable thing to do. So I have felt very blessed to be in a place to provide leadership around this. And that leadership looks different to different people. There's a lady in our church that says every time she puts something in the garbage can, she sees my face. And that wasn't what I was going for, but that'll work. That's fine. You know, I love her. She loves me. And she doesn't any other way other than I've made a connection for her. And other people are talking to me about connections that they've made. So it does feel like a ministry to me, and that I've found my ground of ministry.
So how has it changed you? What shifted in you personally, not about other people? What changed?
Well, I think it's that idea that of being comfortable in leadership around this, and that finding your ground in ministry is huge, because your confidence level, your comfort level, the idea of being blessed to do this work with people and comfortable providing leadership around this issue. Not everyone's in ministry, but there's some pressure in ministry to be good at what you do and to know what you're talking about and all that. And it takes a while to get your sea legs. And so for me, I think it's made me a better ministry leader.
Yeah. Are you surprised by everything that you've accomplished?
Yes, it's so fast. I'm surprised by people's passionate response.
Yeah.
And I know I'm a good salesman, I have to tell you, and whatever you feel passionate about, people catch that passion. So I'll take a little bit of responsibility for that. But also I think people are ready, just ready to do something different. Certainly we've been talking about this since the 70s, right?
Yeah.
And we're sort of, we're not sort of, we're very much in a crunch time.
Yeah.
And so if by doing these little things at home, we get ready for the big things that are going to happen, it is that building on that awakening. There are some big changes that need to take place, and we're not doing those yet. Like you say, transportation is a huge one.
Yep.
But if by doing these smaller things, I think people will be ready to hear the fact that you can't have that much gasoline in a week. I don't know how this is all going to turn out.
Yeah.
But I suspect there's going to be more sharing of vehicles and that kind of thing. We're already seeing that with Lyft and Uber. And I was up in Norfolk visiting my son, and they have scooters for rent out in the community. And so you scan your debit card through and all that. And there were people all over Norfolk on these stand-up scooters.
Yeah.
And that's a way to do it. There's lots of more things that are going to come out on the market, and we need to be open to those.
Yeah.
We have been the Western cowboy, I'll do it myself on my own horse, since the John Wayne movies. And we can't really do that anymore. We have to, we've been so independent, and that's such a pride point for us in America, that there's some shifts that need to happen around that too.
Yeah. You pointed out something that was really important, and that you have become a leader because you needed to in order to do this. But I think people are looking for leaders, and I think that's a critical piece. And that goes back to our earlier conversation, something that's becoming more and more pointed for me, and that is people understand something needs to change, but they're waiting for someone to lead them. And I think that anybody who has the ability and the desire and the passion to step up and lead has to do it. And that's kind of what you're demonstrating. And you said you were surprised by how many people started to join in, but they're waiting for leaders. And I think that's something that, I don't know that's good or bad, but it's something that exists. I don't know if it's just in this country or not, but it's something we need to address. So what do you think about that?
I think that's true. And that's what I mean when I say people were ready.
Yeah.
The pump was primed. They just needed a direction and leadership about what to do with the desires that they also were holding in their hearts.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of people out there like that. Not everyone. We have to recognize not everyone is willing to make changes or be inconvenienced or have less preference choices and those kinds of things. And that's why government and regulation and the marketplace have to be involved in all this, because it's not going to be voluntary for everybody. But I sure am enjoying working with those people who are voluntarily open-hearted about how we need to do this differently.
Yeah.
Just living our lives minute by minute, decision by decision, being, ecologically aware and conscious that you have a huge impact, and it can be for good or it can be not for good.
Yeah. One of the things, I keep going back to Jamie because it fits so much with what we're talking about, but what they're doing with 0 Hour, they're training kids, 16, 17-year-olds, how to be leaders. And I think that's something that we need to look at, is to teach people that they can be leaders and how you do it. And there is, again, I want to go back to what you said about experts. We're waiting for experts, and we need to become the experts. So how do you think we can empower people to understand that they can be leaders? What do we need to do?
I think it's by example.
Oh.
And so making sure that people see how it looks overwhelming when you look at the environmental issues. It really does look overwhelming, but it is by example that we see people being successful. As you say, one person, one decision, world changers. And letting people know about what other people have done is huge. So I appreciate your podcast and that you're doing this. It's very important that we can see what others have done. Just like when I went to the World Parliament of Religions, there were people standing there of all faiths talking about what they had done. And I'm like, we can do that. We can absolutely do that. Yeah. Leadership is important, but there's another aspect of this too that's a different set of skills, and that's the connector. The person who can see the gifts and skills of other people and connect them to where they're needed. And so it isn't always the one that calls the meeting. It is also the people that work between the meetings to make things happen. And so there's a place for all of us.
Yeah.
You know, I was just thinking about food storage and food waste and everything. And in my little community in Kentucky, my mother, who is not a leader, but she does have skills, a connector got with her and asked her if she would teach a canning class. Well, she'd been canning all her life. Of course, I'd love to teach a canning class. And so people came to her house and she taught a class. You know, so it's going to take all of our different skills, you know, but it was a connector that said, you know, we have a problem with food waste, and we have a problem in an area where people don't have a lot of money and don't need to be wasting their food. And I know someone who can. Let's get these people together and make that happen.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
For me, a connector is a leader. I think we need to expand our definition of leader. Anybody who steps up in any capacity is a leader. It doesn't have to be someone who stands in front of a crowd.
Exactly. So we need to broaden that, because saying someone's a leader is a little scary to people.
Yeah. Okay, so here's another thing we can look at doing. I want to do this too, is teaching people how to step up, what it takes and what it really means. So can we put that on the plate maybe?
Okay, we can explore that. Let's do research.
Okay.
I love research.
Makes you so happy. I love it. I love it.
We got to do the trees first.
Okay, yeah, I agree.
Well, simultaneous.
Okay, done. So what's the bigger vision? I know that you're doing all the composting and planting, but I know you also have a bigger vision, because that's just kind of who you are. So what's the big vision here?
The big vision is to make sure that all faith communities are responding to the environmental situation that we're in and finding their place in the spiritual work around it.
Yeah. I think that's so pointed and so clear. And you referred to the Native Americans, and there's a Seneca, and it's in other traditions too, but I know it's Seneca expression called Mitakuasan, and it means all my relations. And for them, everything is connected. They have, the Native people have the wisdom that we're trying to get. They've grown up with it. They traditionally had it. So I'm wondering how we can enlist, and maybe they're sick of us by now, I wouldn't blame them, but maybe we need to enlist our Native American people here to help us get back to that, because they know this is their tradition.
Yes, and we've had them here for services, and it always includes a blessing for the earth, always.
Yeah. But that's their consciousness. It's like the stone people, you know, the creepy crawlies, everything for them is important. And I think one of the things we've missed so much as people on this planet is that everything is very important. The ecosystem is perfectly balanced, and that the creepy crawlies and the annoying gnats and everything has a purpose. And there is an incredible balance that everything is so important a part of. And the other thing I want to bring up, I'm on a roll, so excuse me for doing this, but the other thing that I want to bring up too is that, and this fits in with the spiritual base you were talking about. When I looked at the PBS special, The Other Side of the Moon, by my friend Mickey Lemley, the astronauts talked about their experience. And one of the astronauts, whose name I do not remember, said when he was on the shuttle and he looked back at the Earth, he felt an intelligence that was present.
I remember that.
Yeah. And then the other piece that I got, and I put this in an article, so forgive me for going over it again, but there's a magnetic pole at each pole, and that is what protects us from getting bombarded by the debris from the sun and space. And so that let me know that there's purpose behind our planet. And so we need to be aware that there is purpose and to stop interfering with that purpose. I guess that's what I want to say. Does that make sense with?
It does. And it makes me go back to my original message about how much we have received in terms of programming from the marketplace.
Yeah.
So the idea of having power and living with the earth has been replaced with having power and buying these products that make you have dominion over the earth. You know, even down to, we had some little bugs on our tomato plants here,
Yeah.
and, you know, I could go do, you know, insecticide kinds of things, or I could sprinkle some lime powder on them. You know, it's such a simple choice, but if you realize you need to work with
Yeah.
instead of control, and we very much, the marketplace tells us that we can have control.
Yeah.
And you can, on the short term, you know, I could have killed every little tomato worm out there, you know, instantly. But the long-term effect, and that's really it, is this short-term thinking that relies on the marketplace and money,
Yeah.
as opposed to the long-term being in relationship with the earth.
Yeah.
Those decisions are clear and easy to make if that's your paradigm you're coming from. How do I work with nature, and how do I not impact in a way that works against nature?
Yeah.
But you're right, understanding that nature is perfect
Yeah.
as it is. And so how do we work with it
Yeah.
instead of trying to change it?
Yeah. And I think that's an awareness that we've lost, because we've gotten so, I think once we left working on the land, and I can't imagine doing that, I would probably starve. But once we left that connection and we moved into cities and we got further and further away from things, living became sort of artificial. And I'm as much involved in that as anybody. I'm not saying I'm different from that, but is slowly becoming aware of how that has affected us and how we've gotten so far removed from what reality is. We are animals. We are not something different, not a different species. We are animals, and we have to cooperate with other animals that live on this planet. So how can we get back to that? How can we get back to that awareness, do you think?
I think you have to spend time in nature, barefoot, in the grass, sitting in the sand, nothing between you and the sand. We've anesthetized every situation. You know, we only walk on the trail, and we, you know, the grass has to be cut and all these kinds of things. I remember being around little kids at the park who didn't want the grass to touch them.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
my kids were barefoot and dirty and mud covered and, you know, climbing trees and all that kind of thing. And you need the experience. You need the sensorial experience in nature. Go forest bathing, as they call it in Japan, and just
I love that.
trees. But, you know, people are afraid because they have grown up on concrete and in apartments, and it's foreign to them. And really, it's not foreign. That's your home. If you go up in a plane, what do you see? It's trees and trees and trees and trees and grass. It always, I love going up in a plane
Yeah.
because all of the houses and everything we've done to the earth becomes minuscule. And all you see is nature and earth. And you realize that's really what this place is.
Yeah.
You know, we're only occupying a little bit of it, so why should we have this huge impact on it, you know? So my suggestion is go get in it, go get wet, go get dirty, go get muddy, hug a tree, all that, and something will awaken in you.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So if you were doing a step-by-step thing that people need to do I would choose to do, let me put it better. What does someone who is concerned but doesn't know what to do about it, what would you say to them are the steps they can take?
Well, as a unity person, I'm always going to say everything starts with prayer and meditation and centering of the self, because there are a lot of conflicting information and agendas out there, and finding your own center is always the beginning of any journey. So through prayer and meditation, and through some good inspirational reading. And maybe we can have a resource page that's attached to this. I don't have the titles here with me, but certainly reading some inspirational work that's positive is a good way to start. Your podcast is a great way to start, to hear what people are doing. And then you are ready and in a place to hear about all the ways in which things are not working.
Yeah.
And you want to stay positive about it. And so looking and surveying the news and those kinds of things and finding areas in which you might have impact. You know, I have impact with the amount of trash that I create. I have impact with the choices I make to spend my money. I have choices about the food I eat or don't eat. You know, there are many places in which I have power around this issue. One of the ways that they say is a great beginning is to do an audit for yourself for a week. And to write down all the purchases, all the things you consumed, what you threw away, you know, how much trash you created, you know, even down to energy usage and gasoline usage. And if you track that over a couple of weeks or a month, you'll get to see places in which you can make improvements for yourself.
Yeah, those are really, really good things. So what you're saying with all of this to me is that it's pretty simple. And everybody can do this. It's not something that you have to be anointed to do, or you have to be a genius to do. It's like something, it's within the power of everyone. And so the first step is awareness.
It is. Preparation is a good thing too, once you figure out the areas in which you want to work. Like, work on yourself and your habits. So the trunk of my car looks a little bit like a kitchen cabinet threw up in it, to tell you the truth. So I've got paper takeaway boxes if I need to pick up food and I don't want to use any styrofoam or plastic. I've got reusable cups. I've got bamboo paper towels, those kinds of things that are ready for me to grab and use, the reusable straws and all that kind of thing. So preparation really makes it easier to stay on track as well. And for many people, I hear about inconvenience that, you know, having your own straws and cups and that kind of thing is inconvenient, or to purchase items that are not in plastic packaging is inconvenient. Certainly, it takes some effort. It does. One of the aspects that come up too about shopping is that my choices are more limited. That doesn't bother me. I feel so good at the end of shopping in a way that's good for everybody, good for my nutrition and for the earth and everything, that I feel good about it. But for some people, they don't like to be inconvenienced. Single serving packaging and all that is one of the largest trash creators. And people say, well, it's convenient. It's convenient. But like if I get stuck, I'm traveling, I don't have a drink, that kind of thing, I'm thirsty, I've drank all my water in my reusable water cup, all that kind of thing, and I go to a gas station to get something to drink, it won't be the best thing in the world, but I can make the choice to buy a soda in a can that I know for sure that I can recycle. And I don't do that often, and my choices are limited. It will be, I'm only going to purchase a drink that comes in a metal can that I can recycle.
Yeah.
You know, so but that is outweighed for me, my preferences being, you know, not foremost in every decision I make, is balanced way more to the other side of, but I feel good about this decision.
Yeah.
This is better for everybody.
And those things are fairly simple. And I'm going to give a little bit of a plug, but Trader Joe's is now having some of their produce without bags, like garlic that usually comes in a package and things like that. And they're working to have the trays that things are in be paper. So I think that we are having impact on certain companies, and that we can keep doing that.
And right now there's a big push campaign to contact Target and to have the company-wide go plastic free for their bagging.
Yeah.
If you want to jump on that, get on the internet and look where you can get on the petition to Target. So yes, look at the power that we're having. It's happening because guess what? That's where we're spending our dollars.
Yep. and the again, Zero Hour with Jamie Margolin, they're having this huge march on Amazon headquarters in Oregon to get them to stop their carbon emissions and to have either electric cars or hybrid cars or trucks for delivery and things. So yeah, it is happening. And I guess that's one of the things I think we need to keep in mind. It is happening. It probably isn't as fast as we'd like, but it is happening. And I think it will accelerate. Do you?
I do. Just driving into work this morning, I heard on NPR that in the state of South Carolina, they are getting ready to buy 60 school buses that have a low carbon emission, and that they hope by 2025, all of their buses are low carbon emission alternative fuel.
Wow, I'm impressed. I can't believe
Yeah, awesome.
Out of
in South Carolina.
Yeah, that is so wonderful. Okay, so there's hope in South Carolina, which is
there's so much hope. There really is.
Yeah.
Will we be a little inconvenienced? Yep. Are we going to pay more for some things? Yep. Is our preference list going to be a little smaller? Yep. It's all good.
Yeah.
We can do this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Elizabeth, thank you so much for who you are, number one, and for what you're doing at Unity and what you're doing in the community as well. It's pretty powerful, and you have emerged as a wonderful leader, even though you didn't know that's what you were going to be when you grew up. But there you are. So thank you very much, and I am so grateful for everything that you do and that you're a part of my life. I'm very blessed with that.
Thank you. Sweet words. I'll take it to heart.
All right. Thank you, honey. So, and I want to thank you as our audience for joining us on Transformations, interviewing people, changing our world. And as you see again, it's one person, one decision, one commitment, world changer. We all have that within us. And as Elizabeth has said, it comes in different forms for each of us, but we each have power. And that's something I hope that you understand, that you have the power to make change, to make beneficial change, and to make this a better place for everybody, and to make this a healthier planet. So again, I'm your host, Diane J. Shaver. Thanking you for joining us on Transformations, interviewing people, changing our world. And I'm going to invite you also to see the other interviews we have and go to www.transformationspodcast.com. And you can subscribe to our YouTube channel if you like. And it's my name, and it has to be all caps or else it won't go in. And it's DIANNE, all caps. SHAVER, all caps, and then you can subscribe to our YouTube channel so you'll be getting the latest interviews. Also, you can go to our YouTube channel called Transformations Podcast, interviewing people, changing, and it says the world, and that's the right one. So I look forward to talking with you soon again, and we will have another interview with somebody who is doing something to change our world, and pretty soon I'll be interviewing you.